Welcome to Left, Right, Center, where we are covering Colorado politics first on CBS News Colorado. I'm political specialist Sean Boyd. We begin with big changes for two members of Colorado's congressional delegation. U.S. Representative Joe Neguse was elected Assistant Democratic Leader in the House this past week, making him the fourth highest-ranking Democrat in the chamber and the highest-ranking Colorado congressman in almost a century. As Neguse climbs the ladder, U.S. Representative Ken Buck is stepping down. In November, he announced he would retire the end of his term. Then last week, changed his mind and decided to leave early. On the eve of his last day, I sat down with him to talk about what he'd accomplished and what's next. After working for nearly a decade to change policy and politics from inside the Beltway, Ken Buck will now do so outside the Beltway, starting with changing how we select candidates for office. Why can't you do that while still serving in Congress?
Part of it takes fundraising, and I can't raise funds for outside groups if I'm in Congress. Part of it involves speaking at times when I would be required to be here to vote.
A lot of people have speculated that you're leaving to take a national media position.
The only people that aren't speculating about that are the network people.
Buck says he has no plans to be a commentator or a lobbyist, but he will continue to champion causes like small government, less debt, and the breakup of big tech. He wrote a book and passed a package of antitrust bills. His legislative achievements also include making Camp Amache part of the national park system and preventing workplaces from silencing victims of sexual harassment. But his clashes with MAGA Republicans have drawn more attention. Have you changed, or has the party changed?
I came here to represent conservatives, and I'm going to stay in that lane and not try to justify my positions.
He says the Constitution, not Republican caucus, guide his decisions.
I'm not here to lie to my voters. I'm not here to lie to Coloradans or Americans. I'm here to follow the Constitution. It is the rule book that we should abide by in Congress.
Buck won office by 35 points in 2014. This year, he would have likely faced a challenge from the right. Did that play into your decision at all?
No, I have never backed down from a fight, and I never will back down from a fight. I'm most proud of the fact that I came here to do the job, and I'm the same person I was when I came here, and I'm going to continue to do that job up until the time that I leave on Friday.
Do you have any advice for whoever succeeds you?
Don't let the money and the prestige and all the bells and whistles distract from the very important job that we have to do here, and that's to solve problems for the American people. Joining me, our analysts, Republican Dick Wadhams and Democrat Sheila McDonald, in for Mike Dino again this week. So, Dick, it's interesting to hear critics complain that Buck isn't conservative enough. I mean, here's a guy who has voted against every continuing resolution, every debt ceiling increase, every COVID relief bill. So, you know, he's a fiscal conservative. He's a constitutional conservative, which has guided a lot of his votes. So what kind of Republican do you think replaces him?
Well, it is ironic that he was the Tea Party darling when he first ran back in 2010 and 14. Sheila will also remember. But I think where Ken got in trouble with the party is this whole notion that we should be using impeachment as a political weapon. And both parties have done that, and Ken's pointed that out. And he's right about that. And then he's also resisted this stupid stolen election conspiracy stuff that Trump continues to talk about. And I admire Ken for standing up to that. But it's hard in my party right now to do that.
Yeah. So there will be a special election to fill his seat through November. And Congresswoman Lauren Boebert, who's running to replace him, says, you know, she's not going to participate in that. What is her calculation here, do you think?
Well, I think she has met with some resistance from Republican activists in the 4th Congressional District. And the special convention that is going to be held next week is made up of those very activists. And I think she was afraid she couldn't get the nomination. Now, frankly, she's in a very strong position in the primary because she's got $1.5 million in the bank. She's got 90% name ID. Not all that name ID is good, as we both know. But I think she's, frankly, the front runner in the regular primary. So she probably didn't lose anything by pulling out of that. So.
Sheila, let's talk about Congressman Neguse. How does having him in such an influential position in Congress impact Colorado, do you think?
I think it will impact Colorado, but even more importantly, Joe's in such a unique position because he, there's a lot of chatter about him running for governor as well, but he's also has this track to be Speaker of the House, which is significant. Wow. And so he now can choose. Now, I think right now he isn't going to choose. I think he'll wait till November when the voters make a decision about which way this country's going, and then he'll have to make a choice. Does he want to stay and fight in Congress if we turn out to be a Trump nation? Or will he come back here and run for governor? And so I think he has a lot of choices. And I'll tell you this, he was a rising star when he was young. He is now a star. He has the trifecta. He's smart, he's likable, he's effective in Congress, he's done so much there. And I think he's one of those members of Congress who can transcend the state that they're from and become a national leader versus just a leader in Colorado. And I think that's huge for Colorado.
He, I think, presumably would have been the front runner to replace Polis. So he decides not to run, then who?
Oh, I think we have lots of choices on the Democratic side. I don't worry about that at all. I think Joe would be a front runner if he decides to do that, and I just don't think he has to decide that right now. I think we'd be lucky to have him in Congress. I think the country would be lucky to have him. If he decides to come to Colorado, I think he would do a great job here as well. He's clearly committed to a life of public service, and he has represented us well. I'm excited for him. I'm very proud of him.
He is one of those members of Congress that does have name recognition, I think, throughout the state, too, which not all of them do. You know, some of them are just isolated to their congressional district. Congressman Doug Lamborn is also retiring this year, and among those running to replace him is Colorado GOP Chair Dave Williams, who has made his campaign all about America first. But as I reported this past week, Williams' family import business was all about China. In his endorsement of Colorado GOP Chair Dave Williams for Congress, former President Donald Trump accused Williams' opponent Jeff Crank of working closely with the Chinese. What Trump apparently doesn't know is Williams' history of working with the Chinese. Not even Crank knew until I showed him trade records from ImportGenius.com, which tracks the contents of shipping containers entering the U.S. using data from U.S. Customs. Those records show Williams' family business, MKW Global Sourcing, had just over 1,100 imports between 2008 and 2020, all but 11 from China.
I never knew what Dave did, because Dave hides these kinds of things from people. And, you know, it's kind of like, what else does he hide?
While one of Williams' old campaign websites and a filing with the Secretary of State's office show he served as the registered agent and vice president of logistics for MKW, his current LinkedIn profile and current campaign website make no mention of the family business that, according to Import Genius, contracted with a Chinese company to ship 12 million pounds of Chinese plastic products into the U.S. And yet Williams says he's a leader of Trump's America First movement.
Dave is a hypocrite. He's made his whole career off of selling cheap Chinese products, then runs out and tells everybody he's Mr. America First.
Not only does Williams say he's America First, he says Crank, who worked for the conservative super PAC Americans for Prosperity, is a globalist.
It's pandering. Dave is a panderer. It's really staggering to me that he would, attack me, blame me, when I haven't made any money off the Chinese Communist Party.
I asked Williams for comment. He had a spokesperson send me a statement that did not address the business at all. It just attacked Jeff Crank. So, Dick, how will this impact Williams' campaign for Congress, do you think?
Well, it's not going to help him. Sean, I was thinking about some of the people I've worked for in my life. And, Bill Armstrong owned a radio station. Hank Brown was a meat company executive. Wayne Allard was a veterinarian. Ben Campbell was a rancher and jewelry maker. All these, and Corey Gardner worked in his family's farm implement. They all talked about that. They almost led that as part of their reason they wanted to be in office. And for him to hide this, I think tells you everything you need to know. He knows it's a liability. I think he's embarrassed by it. I mean, he literally made his living off the Chinese for years, and now it's been revealed that that's what he did, and he doesn't like it. So.
You got to wonder what former President Trump will think when he learns of this.
Probably nothing, but it's not going to help him. So.
Right. So Sheila, you know, the Colorado Republican Party continues to shrink. It's as though it's imploded. Democrats already have a supermajority in the state House. Do you see them getting a supermajority in the state Senate, given what's going on with the Republican Party this November?
I think there's a great opportunity for them to get a supermajority. I think there's a couple of seats that they might be able to flip if they can hold on to Kevin Priola's seat in Adams County. And I think the Republican Party has drifted so far from even mainstream Republicans. And I think you saw that in the primary. Nikki Haley getting as high a percentage as she got essentially against an incumbent says to you that even the most conservative wing of the party is not with that Trump MAGA group. And so as the Republicans keep following that path, it turns off the unaffiliated voters, and those unaffiliated voters are going to make the decision. And they're not really with any party. They sort of vote as they want, but they're not going to be with the MAGA. So if you get a candidate who is following that path, that MAGA path, I think that seat will be easier to flip. So there's a chance the Democrats can do that.
It is interesting, Dick, too, that as the Republican Party moves further to the right, you're seeing the far left of the Democratic Party get more control down at the Capitol, too.
Yes, and that's the consequence of the Republican Party becoming more and more irrelevant. And because it's not empowering just the Democratic Party, it is empowering the far left elements. And I really do think the leaders of the Democratic Party they're cowed by they're afraid of the left wing, and they constantly make concessions to them and defer to them because they're afraid of being defeated in primaries.
Well, coming up next, backlash after the chair of one county commission does away with public comment section of meetings. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Left, Right, Center. Well, some of the most heated moments at City Council and County Commission meetings come during public comment. But after the Weld County Commission came under fire for killing a resolution that declared Weld was not a sanctuary county, Board Chair Kevin Ross decided to eliminate public comment, which, as you might expect, led to more backlash, causing him to eventually reinstate it. So Sheila, Fort Collins mayor said, she was also considering doing the same thing after a pro-Palestinian group disrupted a meeting there, and they had to cancel it. What's going on? I mean, there's got to be a better solution, right?
I think there are some solutions, and Mayor Arndt, I think, is trying to find some parameters to put on public comment so that she can keep it. But that being said, democracy is unwieldy. It's messy.
Right.
We need it to be that way because the way you get good public policy is through discussion. Yes, elected officials, we put them in there, we want them to make decisions, but we want to give our input. And when you stifle that, it's very dangerous for our democracy. When you do it at the local level, then when people see it at the national level, they're so used to it that it's easier at the national level to be able to stifle a conversation. Public comment, yeah. Get over it. We elected you. This is part of it.
Right. Dick, at the state capitol, Democrats passed a bill that Governor Polis signed into law that limits the public's access to information. It effectively exempts the legislature, and the legislature only from the state's open meetings law. And it comes after Democratic leadership was sued twice this past year for violating open meetings law. So what did they do? They go, okay, yeah, we're not going to, respond by making sure that we have this, we're abiding by this open meetings law. We're just going to do away with it. What is going on?
During National Open Meetings Week.
Right, I know, Sunshine Week.
Sunshine Week.
Gosh.
Sean, it seems like every week I say to myself, wow, another example of how arrogant the Democratic majorities have become. And they've now gone way too far. Here we go again. I mean, honestly, to to basically exempt the legislature from a big chunk of that law is just not right. But they think they can get away with it. And I'm really disappointed in Governor Polis. He knows this was wrong. And he didn't have the guts to veto it. And he basically said, well, if that's what they want to do, I'll let them do it. No, he should have shown some leadership. So he's a co-conspirator in this.
Yeah, Sheila, I was a bit surprised that he signed off on this, and he had something in some signing statement saying, oh, it's a separation of powers, so it's their right. They do what they want to do. You know, that's a cop-out, it seems.
It certainly was bad optics for the Democrats. I think we want good governance, and I'm not sure this falls under that. And I think the argument can be made, look, you have lobbyists up there, everybody's counting votes, they know what the votes are anyway when you go into a meeting, and so, but it's not really how we should be running business in this day and age. And I try to use the thing, if it was the Republicans doing this, right, we'd have been having a fit about it. Right. And so we need to manage that a little bit better and not rush these types of bills through. I think it's bad.
And they think Republicans will never be in charge again, but if they are, right?
You never know.
You know, it'll apply to them too.
You never know. Right, exactly. And I think we should operate on what is good governance for everybody, not just certain groups that are in charge.
Absolutely.
Sean,
right.
Could I make one comment about the meetings, the open meetings thing? They ought to be open. Sheila's dead right about that's why these people get elected. But I am concerned about the tactics of these people taking over meetings and shutting down these public meetings. And that's got to end. So I mean, there's some responsibility on the public's part too.
Right, and the Weld County chair said the reason that he had shut it down was because they were complaining about things that had nothing to do with Weld County business, and they had to get business done at these meetings too. So, well, also at the Capitol, a bill banning so-called assault weapons, which includes all kinds of guns, passed out of a House committee this past week. Some 600 people showed up to testify on the bill that would make it a petty offense to buy, sell, or possess one of the guns. So, Dick, supporters say the bill will help prevent mass shootings. I am not sure that a mass shooter is going to be afraid of being, fined, for a petty offense here.
I live about a mile from Columbine High School, so the mass shooting thing is something that I'm intimately seeing, as we all have. But you know what? It's not going to prevent anything. This is a feel-good bill by the left wing of the Democratic Party, and they're going to pat themselves on the back if they pass this. The only people they're punishing are not potential killers. They're punishing law-abiding gun owners, and that's who they're punishing. And they continue to try to move towards making all guns illegal. That's what their goal is, and it's not going to work. But they're going to feel good doing it.
Well, Sheila, this is one of at least 10 gun bills this session. I think back to 2013. I was at the Capitol then, too, when there were, I think, like 4 gun bills that actually got through, and you had a couple Democrats recalled as a result of that. What's changed, that now you just... I mean, these I think are more far-reaching than those bills were.
These are a lot more far-reaching, and I would disagree with Dick. I think it's about time. I think Senator Morse and Senator Harron really were at the tipping point of this, and frankly, hats off to them. They put Colorado before themselves, and they were willing to get recalled for it, even though they were both from fairly conservative districts. I think some of the other gun bills are reasonable. Don't bring guns into sensitive areas. Don't bring guns to a playground. Don't bring a gun to a zoo. Like, really? That should be a basic rule. I think what's happened since then, Club Q, this week is the anniversary of the shooting at East High School. I think when you are seeing those types of things and they're touching everybody, the Boulder grocery store, more people are getting touched by this, and thoughts and prayers are not enough to stop this. Now, to Dick's point, will this keep more shootings from happening?
A petty offense. I think that's a petty
offense. It's not strong enough. And, I would say this, yes, they're coming from the left wing of the party, and so the left wing of the party should be doing something stronger, frankly. But I don't think it's enough to stop a mass shooting. This bill specifically, but I do think that the you know, there's no need for assault weapons. I just disagree with that.
If only we had had a gun-free zone sign on Columbine High School, the Aurora Theater, and the school in Douglas County, those things wouldn't have happened.
He's being sarcastic.
Yes,
we know.
he is being sarcastic. That's true. That's probably true, but we have to do something else. And I think when you talk to these kids at East High School who basically watch their friend be executed in a drive-by shooting, it's
horrible.
It's horrible, and we cannot sit by and do nothing on it.
All right, well, finally, corrections workers who were given a promotion and a raise are now being told years later, oh, it was a mistake. And you have to pay back the money to the state. My colleague Karen Morfitt spoke to several of those employees who say they owe the state now between $500 and $20,000. Sheila, the department says, well, state fiscal rules, they require this, but it just doesn't seem fair. It's not the employee's fault.
It's not the employee's fault. It's not fair. It can be fixed. Whether it's the legislature or the governor, they need to fix it immediately. That you give a person a promotion and a raise, there is no reason they would think that 2 or 3 years later you're going to come back and ask for that money. That is not reasonable.
And it's not like these people make a ton of money too, and they're corrections workers, right?
They do a very hard job. It's a public service job for the people of Colorado. This can be fixed by either the legislature or the governor, and this is a bill they should rush through.
I think the state employees who made this mistake should pay this back, since they were the ones, or the legislators. I mean, I just, this is offensive that these hardworking employees are going to have to do this.
Right. Yeah. The rule is in place. We get it, to protect taxpayer dollars. But I mean, this is such a tiny fraction of the Department of Corrections budget, which is like $1 billion, right?
Yes, and no fault of their own.
And it shouldn't be the workers who have to pay it back. That's absolutely wrong.
All right. We have agreement on that, so we are going to end on that. Thanks for joining us for this installment of Left, Right, Center. We'll see you next week.